The Dodgers are still favored to sign Roki Sasaki, but now another team has joined the free agency chase for the Japanese pitcher. We get into all that. Also, the Dodgers made a trade this morning, so we get into the details on what the Dodgers just did. As we know, the offseason is continuing and the Dodgers are still making moves. We get into all that in this edition of Dodgers Digest. Hey, this is Mike Nelson. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. I want to thank the 71% of the ones who are watching these videos who have already hit the sub button, but 28% you have not subscribed yet. You know, myself, Brad J, we're bringing you everyday Dodger content. You're not going to find content like this anywhere else on YouTube. We're the best Dodger channel out there, so make sure to hit the subscribe button. Let's get right into it. Of course, Roki Sasaki. Executives see him going to the Dodgers or Padres, but now the Cubs? The Cubs are also potentially involved, according to an exec that voted for the Cubs to maybe sign Sasaki, which comes as a bit of a surprise. This was a poll that was done. The Dodgers, of course, number one, 44%. Padres, second, 35%. Giants, third, 8%. And then other teams came in at 11%. So looking at those stats, what do you guys think? You think the Dodgers are still favored by that much to sign Roki Sasaki? I mean, 44% of execs think the Dodgers are going to sign Sasaki, which comes as a bit of a surprise. Personally, I think the Dodgers are favored to sign Sasaki, but I don't know if it's that much of a done deal, right? I mean, I think other teams are going to get involved, and that's why I wanted to talk a little bit today about the Cubs getting involved, because the Cubs have a couple players that could persuade Sasaki to come to Chicago. I mean, you have Shota Imanaga, who just recently signed with the Cubs, a left-handed pitcher who, of course, was a star in the MPB. This guy could be a player that could potentially persuade Sasaki to come over. Then, of course, Suzuki, who might be on the trading block. He hasn't been traded yet, but those two players could be the deciding factor on why Sasaki goes to the Cubs and not to a West Coast team, right? Everybody, I think, has their eyes, of course, on the Dodgers and San Diego, but you can't rule out these other teams. I don't really think like the Yankees or Mets are real possibilities, but I do think the Cubs could be that team to look out for, right? Because the Cubs have those two players. They, I think, as we know, Sasaki would feel more comfortable going to a team where there's players that speak Japanese. And, of course, he could integrate, learning the English language and all that kind of stuff, right? I think the Dodgers as well present obviously a great destination with Ohtani and Yamamoto on the roster. And that's why San Diego also presents a good destination with Yu Darvish. And we know Sasaki looks up to Yu Darvish. He's one of his biggest inspirations as a Major League Baseball pitcher. So that's why it's such an interesting story, right? I think those are the three potentials for Sasaki. The Giants, I don't know. I just don't buy it. I don't think Sasaki would consider the Giants as an option. I mean, the Giants are a team that, as we know, has been a dumpster fire the last few years. They have just recently fired their GM and president. They got, of course, Buster Posey coming in. And they're basically a team that's in a complete, disaster right now, right? And why would Sasaki go to a team like that? San Diego is not having that situation. They were basically a team that could have went to the World Series last year, the San Diego Padres, right? I mean, the Dodgers beat them in 5 games. The Padres basically choked in the last 2 games, and the Dodgers took advantage. But had the Padres gone through the Dodgers, who knows what would have happened? They could have went to the World Series and maybe potentially won the World Series, right? And as you know, the Dodgers are a World Series winning team. Now, the Cubs are not at that level, but the Cubs have a lot of young pieces, right? They have a lot of young players. They just traded away Cody Bellinger. They got Kyle Tucker now, and they got, of course, as we know, Imanaga, right? I mean, these guys are players that are going to be part of the Cubs for years to come. Kyle Tucker, we don't know. They're going to try to sign him, right? I mean, that's the hope for the Cubs, right? They want to make him a player that they're going to be able to use. But that's why I think Sasaki would consider going to Chicago. What do you guys think? Comment below. Do you guys think that Sasaki is a done deal to LA? Is he a done deal to California, right? Is he already got his eyes set on the West Coast due to the fact that it would be much easier for him to go back home to Japan, right? I mean, being in LA, being in San Francisco, being in San Diego, it's obviously a much, not short flight, but it's much more accessible to go back to Japan. Whereas if he's in Chicago, it is a bit far, right? But I'm pretty sure there's ways to get from Chicago to Japan, right? It's not like he's going to another team that we're going to talk about in a bit. The Dodgers just made a trade this morning. They traded Diego Carta away to the Minnesota Twins. Yeah, I don't think Sasaki's going to Minnesota. I'll tell you that. He just got traded to the Minnesota Twins. And, Diego Carta was one of the Dodgers, of course, top prospect as recently of 2023. MLB.com rated him as a number 414 prospect before the 2023 campaign, but MLB Pipeline had him as number 1 for the Dodgers. So they just traded him away. Of course, we know he was put on waivers, put on designated for assignment this past week when the Dodgers signed Kim. And of course, we talked about it here on this channel that Diego Carta was put on waivers, and it was most likely that he was going to get traded. It wasn't like there wasn't going to be any baseball teams in the major leagues that were going to be interested in a catcher that can hit and is yet to debut in the major leagues. So somebody was going to want him, right? And the team that ended up, giving up something for him was the Twins. The Dodgers got Jose Vasquez back, minor league pitcher. That's what they got. Vasquez back. Guy has not debuted in the major leagues. We don't know too much about him. That is, of course, what happened this morning. So Carta is 23 years old now and is still yet to debut in the major leagues. So he's definitely getting up there. Spent time between AA and AAA. You can see his stats there: 11 homers, 52 ribbies. The Dodgers are getting back Vasquez, who went 4-0 with a 4.99 ERA in the Dominican Summer League for the Twins. So, the ERA a bit high, but a player that, the Dodgers are obviously not going to be expecting anything of in the major leagues. He's just simply going to be a minor league asset for the future. And the Twins get back a player. I used to live in Minnesota, so I definitely followed the Twins on a regular basis for the year that I was there. And, the Twins are in desperate need of some hitting. They're in desperate need of something. And Carta, I think, is going to debut with the Twins in 25, right? I'm pretty sure we're going to see him in the big club. He's going to, maybe not the opening day roster, but I definitely think he's going to be part of that team eventually as a backup. And, who knows, maybe eventually the next Joe Mauer, right? That's what the Twins are looking for. All the best to Diego Carta. I think he's a talented player. I think, nobody could disagree with that. He is a talented catcher. He's probably the best catcher in the minor league system in all of baseball. He's a top guy at his position. And Dodgers, they already have Will Smith for 10 years, and they got Austin Barnes. There's just no room for Carta on the Dodgers roster, and it was time to move on. All the best to him, though. And as always, make sure to subscribe, and let's go Dodgers. Woo!